Hi guys, welcome back to Dark Web. So in today's video I want to talk about under the Mayo's review about Resident Evil 8, and I did this because this YouTube user HV he asked me to, I believe he asked me to, he told me to talk more about the topic. So in this video, I already did my video, but I used the robotic voice because I have a lot of work and don't really have a lot of time to use my voice, and it's in a sense it's really I didn't really have time. I have to work a lot, so yeah. So here is the video, okay? So enjoy, and yeah, this will probably be my last under the Mayo video because I don't want to be seen as someone who hates on this guy, and I don't want to be seen as, I don't know, some sort of anti under the Mayo, I don't know, fanboy or hater or whatever. So this will be my last under the Mayo video because I watch a lot of his videos and I see that all he does is pointing out flaws in gameplay, and that's all that matters to him, and that's really fine. But when it comes to certain games, you also have to take into account the story and the characters and how they act and etc. So if you are for the gameplay only, he is a good source, but in comes as a whole, well, it's up to you, in my opinion. And I say in my opinion because I'm not trying to impose my own perception on anyone. In my opinion, aside gameplay, he isn't really a good reviewer. He tends to be biased, like how he says that the Resident Evil 3D remake is a soulless cash grab, and how bad it is when the original was released 1 year after Resident Evil 2 and it was still trash in many ways. I could even make a video one day about it. Anyway, this is the video, enjoy.
Village is not a survival horror game.
How can you even quantify the survival horror genre in a franchise like Resident Evil? Surely Resident Evil has never been as a horror survival such as Outlast.
Let me start this video by saying I have no problem with anyone who likes this game or praises it. I'm not calling anyone a fake Resident Evil fan just for saying Village is good. If you bought this game and you had a good time, that's great. I want people to enjoy the games they buy. However, I would also like to enjoy the games I buy. The Resident Evil series has had its ups and downs.
So now you say that fans can like their Resident Evil games, yet at the same time you impose your own perceptions on what Resident Evil franchise as a whole is, even though Resident Evil always had a blurred line when it comes to its genre.
I'm fucking shocked. I had no idea it could be this bad. It's not all bad. As a modern AAA video gaming experience, it is average. Not quite decent, but passable. A mediocre gameplay experience dressed up in fancy graphics.
Sorry, but how can you even say it's mediocre gameplay? Like, what is the definition of mediocre gameplay anyway? Is it a mediocre gameplay because you personally did not enjoy it?
In similar fashion to RE7, we have a long intro. Thankfully, this time around we can skip the cutscenes.
In similar fashion to RE7, we have a long intro. Thankfully, this time around we can skip the cutscenes.
God, you know what? I hate this field of view. It's giving me a headache. I can't see anything.
God, you know what? I hate this field of view. It's giving me a headache. I can't see anything.
But really, Village carries the same problem as RE7, a lack of interesting enemies being introduced as the game progresses. One of the reasons I wouldn't call this a survival horror game. It's not survival horror when the game gives you treats for killing everything. The opening combat sections introduce a barricade mechanic that goes on to almost never be used beyond these sections. And as you're introduced to the combat, your character Ethan states repeatedly that the Lycans just keep coming, clearly communicating that these waves of enemies aren't going to stop. And what does that tell you that you need to do? find an escape route. Then they put you into a timed long survival section that contradicts what the game has been telling you. Now you are supposed to just shoot enemies and run away until the fight ends or the cutscene. It's confusing.
Then they put you into a timed long survival section.
And there have been players running around this area wondering what the hell they're supposed to do or where to go. And if you're a Resident Evil fan, you may find yourself thinking, nice, I get to explore this village. And you can't be blamed for thinking that. The original games had exploration sewn deep into their design, especially in the starting areas, large maps containing different paths and rooms to explore.
So, you are blaming Village for removing exploration. Yet at the same time you complain about not knowing where to go and what to do previously?
Puzzle items that had to be found and put together, keys that opened several corresponding doors, some required, some optional. Important items could be found in different orders depending on your exploration path. You may find puzzle items that you don't understand until much later, you just know they're important. That's a key part of the Resident Evil experience. The people making Village would understand how to make a Resident Evil game, even if they were putting a new twist on it, which RE games usually do. Village is, for the most part, if not entirely, a linear experience. That's not to suggest that other Resident Evil games didn't have a set linear progression of maps. They did. Mansion to the guardhouse to the underground to the laboratory. But the way you solved each area was frequently not linear, because you were checking lots of directions and rooms to figure out where to go and what to do. Village strips it all away and points you in the one direction you need to go.
You are right about this aspect. But how can you even qualify it as being bad? Surely you love to put this in bad light just because it does not appeal to your own tastes.
And another cutscene interrupts us, which takes us away from our progress and puts us into a scripted running sequence of just holding up and pressing the interact button on objects. It's not real gameplay, all to lead us right back where we were anyway.
And another cutscene interrupts us, which takes us away from our progress and puts us into a scripted running sequence of just holding up and pressing the interact button on objects. It's not real gameplay.
I'm gonna be able to look around and try to figure out this castle and its puzzles and take this at my own pace.
Are you for real? You just entered your enemy's domain. What do you think it's going to happen?
Running around picking up all kinds of items that go into your inventory, which is massive by the way. If you aren't running out of ammo, you might think that your inventory space is getting tight, and you'd be wrong. The trademark inventory management of the classics, of RE7, of the remakes, even of RE4 and 5, is gone in favor of a ridiculously forgiving inventory that holds just about everything you could ever need. Even in Resident Evil 4, with its big starting inventory, there were so many items, many of them being large, that you still regularly had to make decisions about what you were going to pick up and what to discard. And that's a big part of the overall problem in Village. Decision making. There isn't much of it. Crafting materials don't take up any space at all. That means green herbs, chem fluid, metal scrap, and gunpowder don't occupy your inventory and can always be picked up.
You are right, but then this has already been done in some manner in Resident Evil 6. So, it's not like they came up with something entirely new and out of the blue.
And the next room contains the wine bottle. This is the second puzzle item that has been handed to us at the end of a linear path. There is no satisfaction of discovery. It was just given to us. Remember in the RE2 remake when you found the valve handle that was in the office? It was in this small part of the larger office. Well, the first time I played it, I didn't check that part for some reason, and I ended up leaving without the valve handle.
Remember in the RE2 remake when you found the valve handle that was in the office? It was in this small part of the larger office. Well, the first time I played it, I didn't check that part for some reason, and I ended up leaving without the valve handle.
Avoiding combat in a survival horror game is a key element of the genre.
Except that in Resident Evil you have the choice of fighting your enemies or not. And you have guns at your disposal to do so. So, it's not entirely survival horror.
And because of the exploration-based map design and backtracking through puzzle solving, several connecting areas will be passed through multiple times. You could end up using this hallway 10 times as you're moving around. So you're faced with a big decision. Do I save 20 bullets and just try to move around these zombies? Or do I kill them now so this room isn't so dangerous later on, at the risk of moving forward with almost no bullets left? If I screw up in trying to avoid them and I get bit every time I go through this hallway and I end up using 3 first aid sprays healing myself, maybe that wasn't worth saving the 20 bullets. That's the pressure that a real survival horror experience puts on you. You have to have one of the two, or a combination.
I am not disagreeing with you entirely, but it seems to me you have been playing Resident Evil on higher or highest difficulties where ammo and health supplies are indeed scarce.
RE2 Remake did this beautifully with the Lickers. They were incredibly aggressive and agile, but they were blind, so if you quietly sneaked around them, you could avoid fighting them and save shotgun shells. That's risky in itself, because you're gonna pass through these hallways several times. And if Mr. X is coming after you, and you have to run, and there are Lickers in here, you've got a problem. Or maybe you're forced to defend yourself against a pack of zombies you didn't expect, and you alert the Lickers you forgot were there, and now everything's fucked.
And there are Lickers in here, you've got a problem. Or maybe you're forced to defend yourself against a pack of zombies you didn't expect, and you alert the Lickers you forgot were there, and now everything's fucked.
So they've combined the combat encounters of OG Resident Evil and action-based RE4 and RE5, but completely missed the point with both of them. The inventory is just packed with multiple firearms and explosives, healing items, ammo. It's like they want you to be an unstoppable killing machine, but the game doesn't throw enough enemies at you to justify it.
It's like they want you to be an unstoppable killing machine, but
In RE7, you're making the critical decision of, do I use this chem fluid to make a few more handgun bullets, or do I stock up on health? Again, asking the player to make important decisions that impact their survival.
To be honest, I really do not understand your point here, because I was doing just fine, and it did not affect my survival at all.
In RE7, you'd find a lockpick and wonder which of the 4 locked boxes should be opened. And because of your limited inventory space, keeping a lockpick on you could mean that you don't have room for something else you really need.
Judging from this moment in your video, you only have 8 slots, but your fully upgraded backpack contains 20 slots.
If the game is going to be linear, you need to throw more combat obstacles in front of the player, and they do that here. Your movement options are limited, it's easy to get cornered, it's good stuff.
You state your opinion as if it is the word of God on earth. Who are you to say what or what should not be? For example, Halo 1 is a linear game, yet it has vast locations.
it's good stuff.
We take an elevator up, walk along a set path outside, and get confronted by Lady Dimitrescu in a section where we just have to open the exit door and run away, into a room that gives us the first head for the statue puzzle from the main hall of the castle. Again, we did not find this ourselves. It was given to us at the end of a linear section that we had no choice but to follow. Calling this a boss fight is to insult the entire history of video game boss fights. This could have been really interesting, fighting a possessed doll. Lots of cool stuff could happen here. Instead, the entire thing is just running around in hide and seek, finding the doll and clicking the action button to watch a cutscene of Ethan stabbing her.
So now that you have to avoid the fight and kill the enemy in a more survival way is a bad thing suddenly? If you think about it, in all Resident Evil games you were forced to fight the bosses in normal circumstances. That pretty much disrupts the survival horror genre for me.
I forgot the strawberry puzzle. That's what I call puzzles from Alien Isolation that are so brain dead that a baby could solve it by accident.
I forgot the strawberry puzzle. That's what I call puzzles from Alien Isolation.
After the fish fight, you work your way to the stronghold, where, surprisingly, things pick up a bit. And from this point on, Village actually gets kind of fun, in a dumb RE4, RE5 kind of way. They start throwing larger numbers of enemies at you in rooms where the exit is not clearly marked. In this section here, you have to make your way up to the left side and the right side to pull 2 levers which lower the main gate, which takes a little while to come down. The whole time you're defending yourself from a bunch of lichens. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. If you're gonna give me an inventory big enough to hold 7 weapons and all the ammo I want, put me in these situations where I need to fight for my life. The next section is equally good. It's a multi-level room with narrow combat areas that box you in. You're using explosives to clear the way, enemies are surrounding you. It's great, in a Resident Evil 4 kind of way. The game has desperately needed this kind of action to distract from its lack of exploration and decision making. Next up is a boss fight with the Hammerman, and it's a pretty good one. He's a bit spongy, like all the bosses, but it's a decent fight. He throws pillars at you, other enemies spawn in. I like it. It's fine for a Resident Evil boss. And then we are led to the final map of the game, the factory. Let me tell you something. I haven't watched any reviews of this game, but I've heard that a lot of people don't like the factory section, which blows my mind. The factory is the only map in the game that feels even remotely like a true Resident Evil map. It's the only time they successfully combine different Resident Evil designs into one for a fresh new experience. The factory is a multi-floor area with claustrophobic combat encounters, exploration that requires map checking, secret areas, problem solving, and a central puzzle that requires backtracking and locational awareness.
Funny how you said Resident Evil 8 did a bad job at incorporating Resi 1 and Resi 4 elements. And yet now you say they did a good job. Did it ever occur to you that they incorporated elements from the previous entries and placed them in various locations differently? I don't want to be called a populist, but companies always seek to cater to the larger audience. So when you say the developing team had no idea about what they were doing, you should rephrase your previous claims about them not knowing what they are doing.
This is the only good map in the game. Are people getting lost? Well, boo-hoo. God forbid you get lost and have to figure out a map in a Resident Evil game. And there have been players running around this area wondering what the hell they're supposed to do or where to go. Players get lost. There's a drill guy blocking the most direct route to the foundry, so they run through this left door and now they don't know where they're going. Well, too bad, buddy. Either kill the guy and take the easy path, or look at the map and find your way around. And there have been players running around this area wondering what the hell they're supposed to do or where to go. Chris comes along and gives you this absurd tank which you drive around in while you shoot infinite bullets at Heisenberg's giant metal monster with red weak points. Just hold the trigger on him and move around a little. That's all there is. It's really bad. It's just a big set piece, not really a fight.
I really don't understand your statement. So what? What's the problem? Just because it doesn't personally satisfy you, it's a bad thing?
And it ends with Mother Miranda killing Ethan, which I honestly thought might have been real. Ethan is an insufferable character.
Why?
They tried so hard to make him sympathetic but also cool. It's really cringy. I hate him. I really thought he was dead because the next part of the game has you playing as Chris. The game finally just gives up. I think Resident Evil needs to be more than just monsters and shotguns exploding heads and big creepy levels. It needs the foundations of its gameplay. Not everyone is going to agree, because not everyone plays games for the same reason. There are people who love Resident Evil for the spooky locations, the art style, the monsters, the weapons, the story.
So you do agree that Resident Evil 8 seeks to cater to a larger audience. Then what's the point of your video? Why do you seek to impose your own perceptions of what Resident Evil should be like?
And a game being linear doesn't make it bad. I'm a big fan of the classic God of War games, and they are linear adventures. Super Mario Bros. Is a linear game, even with the warp tunnels. Those games are still great because their gameplay is designed to benefit their linearity, something that Village fails at.
How can you even compare God of War and Mario with Resident Evil? Mario is just a platformer and God of War is a fantasy game. Resident Evil has suffered changes throughout decades as a whole because people don't always want the same thing.
Is it unfair to compare Village to other Resident Evil titles? I don't think so. It's a Resident Evil game.
I am going to stop you right here. Sure, I do agree with what you said. But then, when I have watched your Doom reviews, not once did you stop and say how ID Software turned the Marine from an ordinary survivor into an almost demigod-like being. Or how the classic Doom demons at their slow pace in the old games suddenly became faster in the newest games. Or how Samuel from Doom 2016 was retconned into a maker in the DLCs. But that doesn't seem to bother from what I can see. It seems that as long as the gameplay is satisfactory for you, there's nothing else to discuss about. Did Resident Evil 8 change the classic formula a bit? Yes, it did, but that was to appeal to a larger audience of gamers. Whether these changes are good or bad, it's not up to you or me to decide. Did I like the fact that Doomslayer was turned from a marine survivor into a demigod-like being in the newest games? I don't, but did I enjoy the games? Most definitely. Prototype 2 had better gameplay than Prototype 1. Yet it failed as a sequel in terms of story. Should I just call it a bad game? Like, how can you even qualify what is a bad game? In my opinion, a bad or disappointing game is when it fails to being a proper sequel in terms of game mechanics and story. It's not right to judge a game by a few characteristics and ignore everything else. When you study a game or a movie, you must do so from all angles. You can't say a game is bad just because it didn't meet your own expectations. Anyways, thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to share and subscribe.